Good evening, everybody. It's your buddy Seanvanderlee here, leading you through this wonderful book, 0 to 1, by Peter Thiel again. Because it's Thiel Tuesday! And that's just what we do on Tuesdays. That and go to the cheap movies at the theaters for, well, I don't even know what that costs nowadays. $5? Once upon a time. Well, last time around we talked about chapter 2 and sort of how it was a history of the 90s. And there's a part of chapter 2 that I sort of skipped over, and that's the part that I want to talk about today. So it's sort of towards the end, and it talks about the lessons that Silicon Valley entrepreneurs who survived the dot-com bust learned. So those 4 lessons are this. 1. Make incremental advances. And the reason that this lesson was learned was because of the grand hubris and hyper ambition that fueled the bust. 2. Stay lean and flexible. This is also code for being unplanned. Not really knowing what your business will do, but just sort of pushing it forward and seeing where it goes, trying things, and taking it from there, sort of flying by the seat of your pants. Improve on the competition. Building your company by improving on recognizable products already offered by successful competitors. So I guess maybe you could say Minds is sort of like a version of this regarding Twitter, or Google Plus tried to be this for Facebook. Focus on product, not sales. If your product requires advertising or salespeople to sell it, it's not good enough. So those are the 4 lessons that apparently, according to Mr. Thiel, were learned from the dot-com crash. And then Mr. Thiel also has 4 opposite principles that he says are probably even more correct. 1. It is better to risk boldness than triviality. We see this a lot with startups these days where, people, you essentially, to get that sort of critical mass that you need to figure out a way to stand apart from the field, and there's literally thousands of competitors out there if you look at it with a broad enough lens. A bad plan is better than no plan. I guess, one of the risks of being a totally unstructured, lean, flexible company is that you don't develop an identity, or you just bounce around, and then, where are you at the end of the day? 3. Competitive markets destroy profits. And later in the book, he gets into greater detail on this, saying that companies should try to become monopolies, try to find places that they can be a monopoly, because competition sucks. Competition grinds you down, kills your margins, never lets you rest. And so it might be good, I guess, for the consumer at some level, but if you're the one in the driver's seat, you want to be in charge of a monopoly. And 4, sales matter just as much as product. And so I think that that's something that does get glossed over, sort of. It's almost like a Greek versus Roman, if you read Taleb, approach, where, something can be awesome in theory, but that doesn't really help you when it's the end of the month and you got to pay bills. You've got to have made some sales. And sure, it's easier to sell an excellent product than a worthless product, but you've still got to sell it at some stage in order to actually make money, which is, depending on how you approach, your business, making money can be important. Now, it's not the be-all and end-all. Some people get into these things for diverse reasons, and, people who are, if you're strictly driven by making money, you could be a drug dealer or do something illegal, right? And I think most of us want to do something that's legal, fulfilling, and also does make money, because, starving is no fun. right? And so when I do these, I don't want to make it so that I'm just reading the book back to you. I like to do them so that it's sort of an exercise in thinking out loud. And as much as possible, I try and bring a perspective of somebody who's living in Alberta, because I know that's might be fresh for some of you, might be interesting for some of you, but it's what I actually do know, because I do live in Alberta. But then another thing that I think that I can bring to you is my own experience as a businessman, because depending on how well you know me, you may or may not know I'm a person who runs his own little law firm. It's just me, and I've been doing that for about 4 years now, coming on 4 years, depending on when you want to exactly start the clock, because I really started operating in August 1, 2015, but was getting the groundwork underway in May of 2015 in earnest. So I guess, maybe I'll just make a few observations from my own point of view on some of these principles. So starting with the 4 lessons learned by the dot-coms. And I should say, like, my business was never really intended to be a startup per se. Like, it's not a true startup in terms of I'm not aggressively developing technology. Okay, my business was started because I thought that I could deliver a service cost effectively to Calgarians. That's why I'm doing it. Good service. Trying to give clients value. I don't have grandiose plans about reinventing law using technology or anything like that. So I don't consider myself to be a startup. I just consider myself to be a small business. So make incremental advances versus the counter principle. It is better to risk boldness than triviality. Now I'll tell you, personally, I'm on the make incremental advances side of this thing. I'm not really trying to be bold. If I wind up being trivial, that's okay. I'm trying to service a set of clients and expand that set of clients to people who I'm going to work with well and can provide value to. And there's about 3,000 lawyers in this city and 1.3 million people. And if that's not a perfect fit for a client, there's another lawyer out there. I'm really realistic about that. Okay, let's see. Stay lean and flexible versus a bad plan is better than no plan. That's interesting. So I like to think I'm fairly lean and flexible. Like when I first came back, I was doing more civil litigation and family litigation, and then I moved in with some more senior lawyers, and have for the last 3 years and a bit have been doing mostly corporate commercial stuff. And so I guess that's not super unplanned. I'm still doing a little bit of civil litigation and a little bit of family, but for the most part, I do have a plan. It might not be the best plan, and I can talk about that more some other day, but there is a plan. I swear, there's a plan. No, trust me, there's a plan. But, so I guess that's not super lean, but at the end of the day, if I had to be lean, I could. I don't have any employees. Could move on relatively quickly or change modes relatively quickly if need be. 3, improve on the competition versus competitive markets destroy profits. So I'm never going to be in a monopoly, a broad monopoly on legal services. And I'm not going for that. I'm not approaching that angle, as I mentioned. I'm not going at this, looking at it as a startup. But, I like to think that I'd like to try and improve on the competition in terms of try and give better service. That's hard. Try and build those sorts of relationships that are lifelong relationships that have a value there. And so, in a way, is that developing your own monopoly? You tell me. I mean, it would be a pretty incredibly narrow version of monopoly, their definition of monopoly, but anyways, it's sort of a way I like to think about it, is developing a tight, crew of clients. And here, I'm knocking on wood hard here. I'm not claiming to be an expert on this. This is just me thinking out loud here in light of these lessons that have been learned and developed in Silicon Valley. Focus on product, not sales. And sales matter just as much as product. You know, this is going to sound cynical. Sales matter just as much as product. You know, at the end of the day, we all need to pay our rent, and we all want to have an excellent product as well. In law, you know, I could be writing a legal brief about the Constitution. My landlord doesn't care how great of a brief it is. Your clients are usually driven by a result. That does require good work. You got to make the sales every month. Otherwise, the lights are going to be put out on you. And then all the other stuff goes by the wayside. It's just that simple. That doesn't mean you can neglect product. You got to try your best. But you definitely cannot neglect sales. You gotta make money every month. Anyways, those are my thoughts on those principles that Mr. Thiel raised in his book that we sort of did gloss over, and sort of how I've thought about them in terms of my own business. So I would really appreciate it if you drop me a line in the comments, say, Sean, you're totally nuts, or Sean, this is how I think about this in terms of my business or a business that I read about. I really would appreciate that. Anyways, I hope that you're having a great Tuesday, that your work week is going good, your desk is getting clean, checks are coming to you in the mail, and that you're otherwise having a good time. Because at the end of the day, life is short. Have a good time, and hopefully help your clients out or do whatever else you are doing in your business well, perfectly well, excellently. That's all I can hope for you on that. Anyways, have a great week. We will check in next Tuesday. Thank you.